Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're targeting a really specific, incredibly pervasive issue that is just quietly draining the life out of global engineering departments. We're talking about a completely broken management operating system for distributed teams. Leading across time zones has pretty much become the defining competency of modern IT leadership. And yet, so many managers are still running their remote teams using frameworks designed for physical offices. Okay, let's dive into this. So, I want you to think about this for a second. How many hours did your distributed IT team lose last week to a decision that really should have taken 5 minutes, but somehow ended up taking 2 whole days? For most engineering leaders, that hits uncomfortably close to home, right? This everyday friction often masks a much deeper systemic dysfunction. You might think it's just, normal growing pains of remote work, but it's actually a fundamental operational failure. Here is our roadmap to fix this fragmentation today. First up, the time zone debt trap. Second, 5 shifts for distributed leaders. Third, building your communication architecture. And finally, measuring outcomes, not availability. Part 1, the time zone debt trap. This is all about the hidden cost of the old office playbook. This right here is the invisible villain that's actively sabotaging your remote teams. We call it time zone debt. Basically, it's the accumulating cost of async delays, that intense pressure of after-hours communication, and massive bottlenecks in decision-making. Think of it like interest on a credit card. It doesn't show up as a line item on an invoice, but it absolutely destroys your attrition numbers, it tanks your sprint velocity, and it quietly, day by day, erodes your team's engagement. To put that into perspective, research from I4CP found that a staggering 58% of employees at large organizations rate their distributed work leaders as only somewhat effective. Wow, that is a massive chunk of the workforce feeling, frankly, entirely under-led. And what this proves is that the problem isn't the engineers you hired, it's the management framework they're being forced to operate within. The operational impact of this is honestly brutal, 19%. According to Harvard Business School research, for every single hour of lost overlap between distributed team members, synchronous communication drops by 19%. Think about a US company with engineers spread across 3 different time zones. That drop is literally the difference between a bug being clarified in a quick 5-minute chat versus sitting totally dead in an async queue for 36 hours. But the human cost? That's even worse. McKinsey data shows that 1 in 3 workers experience outright burnout, and that's largely driven by these always-on communication expectations. Couple that with Gallup's 2024 data showing global employee engagement plummeting to just 21%, we literally cannot buy our way out of this with fancy new collaboration apps. We need a completely different operating system from the ground up. Section 2, 5 shifts for distributed leaders, moving from surviving to high-performing. Now, what's really interesting here is that the Institute for Corporate Productivity found a distinct pattern among top quartile leaders. They operate from fundamentally different principles. Shift number 1, moving away from meeting-first communication to async-first by default. Look, here's the reality. Meetings are your most expensive communication format. Every single sync requires your whole team to be available, meaning someone somewhere is probably compromising sleep or family time. High-performing leaders reserve meetings strictly for architecture decisions, conflict resolution, and relationship building. The rest of it, async. Shift number 2, stop monitoring availability and start measuring sprint outcomes. Gallup's 2026 data shows the average number of direct reports per manager has jumped to 12.1. At that kind of scale, tracking hours online just creates this micromanagement resentment and a culture of performative busyness. Define exactly what done looks like and measure delivery against that. Suddenly, time zones become just logistics rather than a question of trust. Shift number 3 is moving from the manager as a decision gatekeeper. Actually, scratch that. It's more like moving away from being a decision bottleneck toward true distributed authority. The data is clear. Teams where the manager remains the central bottleneck are 3 times more likely to experience engagement collapse. It creates massive after-hours pressure. You've got to categorize decisions, document the criteria, and then step completely out of the loop. And yes, this requires genuine trust transfer, not just delegated compliance. Shift number 4 is abandoning those dreaded ad hoc Slack pings in favor of structured communication rhythms. We've all been there, right? Random check-ins and unexpected video calls are the primary source of time zone pressure. But when you establish a predictable flow for exactly how and when information is shared, the volume of ad hoc interruptions drops significantly within just 30 days. It's about giving your engineers their focus time back And the fifth shift, replacing performance status one-on-ones with growth aspiration one-on-ones. Deloitte's 2026 research reveals something amazing here. Shifting your agenda from what did you do this week to what do you want to build and how can I remove blockers is linked to a massive 48% reduction in burnout. You are shifting your role from an auditor to a sponsor. You're treating your team as people with real careers rather than just resources with outputs.
Part 3, Building Your Communication Architecture, Structuring for Success.
Let's move to N and see how this builds into practical application. It's one thing to understand the principles, right? It's another to actually structure your team for success. Top distributed leaders use this precise 4-layer communication stack. Layer 1, a daily async check-in to completely replace the synchronous stand-up. Layer 2, a weekly written update for blockers and progress. Layer 3, a bi-weekly video call strictly for complex problem solving. And Layer 4, a quarterly gathering, whether in-person or virtual, for strategy and culture. Notice how this layered stack completely eliminates the need for random, disruptive pings.
High-performing organizations actually design their architecture based on their overlap geometry. For example, a US LATAM model gives you 6 to 8 hours of synchronous overlap. That is absolutely perfect for iterative agile ceremonies and real-time collaboration. Conversely, a US India model provides near zero overlap, which sounds tough, but it's actually ideal for handoff-based batch work, like QA automation. The architecture itself does the management work for you by aligning with the specific type of work your team executes.
Now, tools matter, for sure, but they don't matter first. Tools really only amplify your existing operating system. Once your system is actually fixed, you need 4 specific layers. A layer clearly separating synchronous from async communication, a project visibility layer so everyone can see sprint status without ever needing a meeting, an async documentation layer where architectural decisions live safely outside of chaotic chat threads, and finally, a people layer to track those growth conversations so they survive manager turnover.
Part 4, Measuring Outcomes, Not Availability. This is the reality check.
So the crucial point is, this is the ultimate reality check for your management style. You have got to abandon presence metrics like online hours. They only measure compliance, not value. Instead, top leaders track these 5 specific outcomes. Cycle time from ticket to deployment. Async response latency, which measures system health, not individual availability. Decision velocity, quarterly team engagement scores, and rework rate, which is honestly the best indicator of communication quality. When you make these outcomes visible, those old surveillance instincts just vanish, and true high performance takes over. We'll leave you with this final, provocative question. Are you managing time zones, or are they managing you? Time zone debt is very real, and it is compounding every single sprint you run on an outdated office playbook. The most successful leaders out there aren't winning because they bought a fancy new collaboration app. They're winning because they fundamentally redesigned how work moves and how decisions are made. It's time to intentionally design your distributed operating system. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.
Thanks for watching. We appreciate you. Check out the next video on this topic, or subscribe to our channel to keep up with our latest explainer videos, live webinars, and other insights into technology solutions.